Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? I am Groot, and today we're going over how to counter Boo in this episode of the strategy series. A few subscribers have actually requested that we go over this, so today I'm going to bring this video to you guys. This is a very popular aggro deck in the format. If you want to look at the two best aggro decks in the format, I would say Majin Buu, Mono Black Majin Buu, and Reboot Gohan are the two best aggro decks in the current format, and that's for a specific reason. So aggro decks in this format, they're taking specific advantage of multicolored decks in the fact that they have to charge a multicolor turn one. Sometimes if you are playing the multicolor deck, you're going to want to not opt to charge that multi turn one, but sometimes your deck needs that multi to function. So it gets really tough, especially if you go second as the multicolor deck. They get 2 energy to just absolutely onslaught you while you're trying to just, stabilize. So in today's video, I'm going to give every single color a way they can deal with Boo. I think it's going to be a pretty helpful video. Guys, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so never miss a video. If you guys want to help support the channel, lots of ways you can do that. We have the Patreon down below, lots of competitive content for stuff just like this, for beating certain things in the meta. The Crossroads TCG merch store, which looks dope and helps out a lot. And finally, guys, if you want to buy any of the cards you see in today's video, make sure to use my links to either TCG Player or Breeder Collectibles down below. That being said, let's get right into this, talking about the strategy of Boo. So the Bibbidi leader, you start off as Bibbidi and then you awaken to Boo. Bibbidi attacks, draws a card, gains 5,000 power. When he has no cards in hand, he can awaken at any point in the game. As long as you have no cards in hand, you take 2 life, you draw 3 cards. Once you're on your backside, you'll draw 5 cards every single turn, and you can discard a card to either absorb a 3 or less your opponent controls or give your leader plus 5,000 power. Now that's going to be their way they can dump their entire hand and then refuel at the end of the turn if they need to. But besides that, since they're constantly refueling, whether they're on the Bibbidi side or the Boo side, they're going to combo their cards to either force damage onto you or to defend damage, because they want to stay at a high life total as possible. Their super combo doesn't care what life they're at. They don't ever care what life they're at. The higher life total they keep, the longer they can keep the game going, and they're going to just keep putting pressure on you over the course of the game because of their Boo chain, which we'll talk about right now. So Majin Buu, Ghastly Rampage, the main playmaker of the deck. 2-drop 15k, activate main if all your energy is black, you have no cards in your hand, and you place this card in your drop area. Choose one. Choose up to 1 black Majin Buu card with energy cost of 3 or 4 in your drop area and play it. So that's going to be the main thing you're going to go for on turn 2. Or if you have 3 or more energy, you can choose a black Majin Buu with energy cost between 3 and 6 in your drop area and play it. So they're restricted to certain things on turn 2. On turn 2, they can play this Majin Buu Ghastly Rampage. They can then go into their 4-drop Buu, which is a dual attack 15k, which then allows them to go into the 6-drop Majin Buu, which we'll talk about in a second. When they're on turn 3, they can do all of that, but they also are able to go into 2 5-drops, one of which is a 25k crit and a 25k double strike. So once they just go on in their turns, they're able to put on immense pressure. Now they're going to end on one of 2 6-drops when they're done with their Boo chain. The main one is going to be Majin Buu Supreme Evil. 6-drop, permanent. This card can't be removed from your battle area by your opponent's skills. Permanent. When this card is in rest mode, your opponent cannot use non-leader card skills to add cards from the deck to their hand. So that ability there just adds more pressure. You're trying to keep up hand size because you're spending a lot of cards to play defense, but your super combos and your other cards in your main deck that draw cards, they can't draw cards while this card's in rest mode. Activate battle, pay 3. This card gets plus 10,000 power and triple strike for the duration of the turn, and it's a 20k base. So this effect actually comes up the least, at least for my Boo experience, because they're just beating you down with everything else that they really just need the single strike to go through. And if the single strike goes through on your 1 life, they're just going to combo everything and you're going to be in a bit of trouble. Now, one of the key things, and we'll talk about more as we go through the video, you want to keep their board clear as much as you possibly can of their Boo chain, because every single turn they'll generally have the ability to establish another Boo chain, and one of those cards they'll be able to do that with is Bibbidi Unrepentant Sorcerer. 1-drop auto if all your energy is black and you have 2 or more energy. Choose 1 card in your hand, place it in your drop area. When you play this card, choose up to 1 Deborah, Pui Pui, Yakan, or Majin Buu card in your drop area with energy cost of 2 or less and play it. You can't play Bibbidi Unrepentant Sorcerer for the duration of the turn. So this is a way they can recur the Majin Buu Ghastly Rampage. They also have a Pui Pui that's pretty important in the deck that prevents you from activating counterplays if they have 2 or less cards in hand. So keeping that in mind, that's the strategy of Boo. They're just a straight beat down deck. Let's talk about some of the ways to counter them. Okay, so first thing we're talking about, negging effects, cards that give minus power to battle cards. Nice thing about this and kind of bad thing about this, they're heavily tied to red, but you do have other ways to splash these cards even if you're not playing a red leader per se. So firstly, we have Cooler Tyrannical Assault. This is mostly going to be played in the Cooler deck. You guys probably have seen that a lot at your locals. But other decks are splashing this archetype. You know, we have Red Yellow Surge Goku that have been splashing the Cooler Engine. You could technically splash this in any blue deck because you'll have access to those same blue-red cards that you have access to as Cooler. So if you're playing any type of blue-red strategy and you need an arrival that helps you deal with Boo, Cooler Tyrannical Assault is a great option for that, because in the way that minusing card power works in the Boo chain, their 2-drop will sacrifice itself to start off a new Boo chain, but that new Boo chain will continuously put Boos on top of the older Boos. And when you are, it's not an evolve, but it's kind of like an evolve. And when you're doing that evolve-esque type of thing, any minus power abilities will follow onto the new Boo. So like I mentioned before, they start off with a 4-drop 15k dual attacker. If they attack with that and you arrival Cooler here, that thing will become a 5k for the rest of the turn. Then if they're on like 3 energy or more, let's say, they can go into their 5-drop Boos, but those will only be 15k attackers instead of 25k attackers, because that 10,000 power will carry over. That's really important. Cooler is also really great because you'll notice that Boo spams the board with a lot of 1-drops. They have a 1-drop Boo that searches the top of their deck. They have the 1-drop Bibbities. Sometimes they'll drop the Turles dual attack Ghost Warrior, and this can actually kill that Turles in one arrival. So that's really, really high value. Cooler is a great card if you're playing blue-red. Maybe you're playing some type of tricolor blue-red-yellow. You can still probably splash Cooler, and it can work out pretty well. Next up, a bit of a more generic card, We Celestial Moderator. This is a super combo that you can use if your leader is red or yellow. Does not care what life total you are at. You choose one of your opponent's battle cards, it gets minus 10,000 power for the duration of the turn. So same idea there. The minus power is carrying over onto several battle cards. You can also like block a Turles attack and give a Boo minus 10. So in that way, you're using this We Celestial Moderator as a 2-for-1 attack stopper. You're stopping 2 attacks for 1 card. That's always what you want to look for when you're fighting up against aggro decks. You want to look for cards that are 2-for-1s that stop a lot of attacks for the least amount of cards. Next up, the most generic in terms of red, you know, if you're playing red yellow, red green, red blue, whatever kind of red you're playing, mono red, After Image Technique is the card you're going to want in this scenario. Counter attack, if your leader's red, choose up to one of your cards and it gets plus 40,000 power. Typically going to be your leader because they're going to be attacking your leader a lot. Then you choose one of your opponent's battle cards, gets minus 10,000 power for the duration of that turn. So again, same idea here. Giving that minus 10 to the Boo chain, and it'll follow as they, you know, sort of evolve onto their next part of the Boo chain. You could also play Is That All You Got? That is a much more costly card. It does cost you an additional card out of your hand, and you're going to be playing a lot of defense against Boo if you're playing a mid-range or control deck. So you kind of want to conserve cards as much as you possibly can. The extra 5k power isn't the most relevant thing. I mean, you can kill off very specific parts of the Boo chain that are only 15k, but you're using 2 cards to kill 1 card, and that's pretty bad economy. So I'd probably recommend After Image over Is It All You Got in most scenarios, just my opinion. Next up, we're talking about some green cards you can use to combat Boo. So Shocking Deathball is a card that no real green decks are playing right now, but it actually is pretty helpful because, again, I mentioned they drop a ton of weenies on the board. So you stop the attack of a 4-drop or 5-drop or 6-drop, you pick off a weenie, and that's just less combo power they have to attack you with later. A lot of times as well, they're going to attack with their 1-drop 5k battle cards and just combo cards into them because they want to empty their hand to either awaken or just refuel at the end of the turn. So those 1-drop attackers they have on the board, they're going to combo them up to 15 or 20k. So picking them off the board is pretty good. Also, Shocking Deathball means your opponent can't attack with a 2-drop 15k Boo, because if they do, they're at risk of losing that card because this pops a 2 or less. So their first Boo, the Playmaker, Ghastly Rampage, is a 2 or less. Shocking Deathball could pick it off. No Piccolo decks are really playing this, and I do understand why. I mean, Dimension Magic is great because getting additional energy to defend with after the fact is also really powerful, but I think a splash of Shocking Deathball, maybe 2 to 3 copies on top of Dimension Magic, can definitely help Piccolo decks in dealing with Boo. Next up, I want to talk about Topo Mortality Surpass. So if you're playing a lot of these successor decks, you do need a multitude of energy to work with, whether you're playing Stealth Successor or Jiren Successor, whatever the case is. But against these aggro decks, they're not going to give you a whole lot of time to get up into those bigger successor chains, into your 9-drops, and then into your 12-drop SCRs. So what you might notice is when you're playing these successor decks, you might actually be going into like 6-drop into 6-drop into 6-drop to put some pressure on and then clear board. Now the great thing about Topo is when you play this card, you negate the skills of a battle card and then KO it. It also ignores barrier, which is excellent, but that's not super relevant against Boo. So negating the skills is great because the 6-drop says it can't be removed from the battle area by skills, but once you negate that skill, you don't have to worry about that effect anymore. You guys may have seen yesterday's gameplay video where it was Universe 6 up against Boo, and that was another really relevant effect with the Kale Awakened Sister 4-drop. When it comes into play, you negate the skills of a battle card, then return it to the owner's hand. So same idea there. You're negating the skills and getting rid of it off the board, which is very important. Next up, a few negates you can play. Mofuba is great for any blue deck. We talked about a red splash, talked about a green splash. Now we're talking about anything that's playing blue, yellow, blue, red, whatever the case is. Mofuba is great because they do need their boos to exist on the board in order to go up that boo chain and quote unquote evolve. So if you Mofuba them at any point, it can be really good. Just watch out, because sometimes if you're on that 2 energy, tapping out for Mofuba can be pretty risky, because especially if they went first, they'll probably have more energy and more ways to go back into their boo chain. With the 1-drop Bobbity, they also have a 1-drop extra card that pays for 2 out of the drop area to reborn a boo. So keeping those things in mind is important, but Mofuba can be really good in the right situations. Next up, Petrification. This is great if you're playing black, whether you're playing Demigra, whether you're playing Toa. Petrification is a great option. Counterattack if your leader is black, negate the attack, discard a card, choose one of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier. It can't attack, can't be placed in the owner's combo area, or activated skills until the end of the next turn. So 1, preventing the attack. 2, stopping the abilities from activating means that the boos cannot go up into their next part of the chain. So really helpful there, especially if you're playing something like Toa that needs a bit more time to get into its next phase of the game. Now we're talking about a few cards that are a little weird, but in the right situations they can be very impactful. So first up, Super Saiyan Vegeta, Exploiting Weakness, 3-drop, or it's a 5-drop, but if your leader's red, it's a 3-drop. Counterplay: when you play this card, choose all your opponent's battle cards. They get minus 20,000 power for the duration of the turn, and if it's your opponent's turn, choose up to one of your leader cards. It gets plus 5,000 power for the duration of the turn. So I've talked about this and Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken Goku as being kind of interchangeable, and Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken Goku is a card coming out of Draft Box 5. This matchup is one of the rare situations where Vegeta is automatically better as long as you're playing a red leader, because this minus 20s and doesn't KO 20 or less like Goku does. So minus 20 is pretty relevant because, again, the boo can't be removed from the board by skills, but if you do minus 20 it will be removed from the board by game mechanics, bypassing that permanent skill that it has. Now, the other weird thing about this card is that it is a 3 cost, and I mentioned with Mofuba that having a high cost, defense to boo can put you in kind of jeopardy, because if you tap out for this thing for 3, well, if they have ways to restart their boo chain or put additional pressure on you, you're going to be in trouble. Now with Vegeta, that's not usually something you have to worry about, because this does clear the whole board. So if they have any other parts of the boo chain on the board, or any Turleses, or any godly Beerus godly majesties, this is going to be really helpful for keeping those boards clear. Your leader also gets a 5k, so that's good, obviously, for free combo power. But something like Surge Goku, Red Yellow Surge Goku, this is excellent in, because you do have additional surge effects that can help you back up the defense of this card. Maybe if you have Sparking for After Image, if they're able to reestablish a boo chain, that can be helpful as well. Zamasu, Sacred Disbelief. Now, this isn't the best card against boo. It's definitely not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not the best. But it is a card you might be playing to combat Reboot Gohan, because this card is actually stellar against Reboot Gohan, and it can be good against boo as well. Again, if they have a boo chain on board, you use this to, defend out of an attack, then maybe you tap a Turles, or you tap the leader, so the leader doesn't put pressure on you. Also, you could halt their Awaken in certain scenarios, because if they're still on their unawakened side, if they didn't combo all into an attack, and you use Zamasu to arrest their only other threat, then they can't awaken right then and there, so that's pretty good. And then finally, Weskai Keeping Watch, another kind of weird one. In certain scenarios, this can stop their awaken if they decide not to awaken mid-combat. But the other thing here is, like, let's say you're at 1 life, they attack with like a 1-drop weenie, like a 1-drop 5k boo. Let's say they drop a Bibbidi super combo onto it, and this thing has, like, 20 cards in the drop area, so it's a huge super combo. Well, you Weskai it back to their hand, they have no more attackers, they have to discard the Bibbidi and end their turn right there, and you survive. So in certain scenarios, Weskai can be good. Again, Weskai is probably a card you're playing for Reboot Gohan, and I'm just trying to give you guys the dual usage in the boo matchup. But guys, overall, these are all the cards I wanted to talk about today. There are a lot of other cards you can use to help combat boo, so if you have any suggestions, definitely drop them in the comments below. Let me know what you think about this video. Thanks for watching. I will see you all next time.